when I started my job, they thought I was her. So my team in New Zealand Googled me, and my images got mixed up with another Amy Vedder. And this is when I first learned that we all use the English language, but we actually use it very differently. So I went to New Zealand to meet my team, and we spent a whole day together. And the whole day, they had also Googled the fact that I was a yoga instructor, and they kept interchanging body sculpting with yoga. So I just thought they meant the same thing. So all day long, we were getting frustrated, and by the end of the day, they said, "I'm just so impressed you're a champion body sculptor." I'm like, I give up. I don't know what you're talking about. So you know, I aspire to look like her, but she is not me, but they weren't for sure, so they were trying to abide by that. But other things that we laughed about that day is they said they were going to pick me up in their people mover. So I thought we were going to be riding on Segways the whole day. They say Z instead of Z. We have, when we put together education, we have to be very careful when that education goes out that we don't have S's instead of Z in the U.S. education content and so forth. So, you know, all of these things come up over time where you start to get to know what some of these differences are between the countries. So let's first talk about what is different and are they different. So the countries that I have teams in are New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. And when I first started at Xero, and you know, most of my roles, even though I've had international stints in them, I wasn't responsible for global teams. I hadn't spent a lot of time with accountants and bookkeepers. And all I was hearing when I came to Xero is New Zealand and Australia are ahead of accountants in the US. So I was trying to understand that, like how could that be? And so I've come up with some of my own hypothesis of how that happened, where they got to the cloud sooner than us. And some of it's been in what I've learned about their industry in those countries. The first thing is they have very few banks. So in our country, we've got hundreds of banks going to credit unions and small regional banks and national banks and international banks, which creates a level of complexity that is different than most countries. So when they started moving into automation, they weren't trying to automate hundreds and hundreds of banks. They had a few banks to go after, and they were able to start working with that technology to do that. So they were able to move faster. So, you know, they look at us and can't believe that we still use checks. And when I started going there, those chip cards were already in play that we're just getting now. So they were able to move at a rate that was different from us, but which also was because the level of complexity in the accounting software is different as well, and we have a more litigious society. So I've learned, for instance, in New Zealand, there are laws against suing people. So, you know, us as accounting professionals in the United States, we always have that in our head about being risk averse and being very careful of our professional standards and how we go about things. They're able to take risks at a different rate because of the difference in how things are set up. Additionally, what I found interesting as we started putting together educational content in each of these countries is the bookkeeping industry and the accounting industry are regulated. So there are tasks that if you are a bookkeeper, you cannot do as an accountant. And if you are an accountant, you can't do as a bookkeeper. So when I stepped back and thought about America, we don't separate ourselves like that. Bookkeepers can do accounting work, they can do taxes, and vice versa. We actually leave it to the market to decide what they're willing to pay and assessing that expertise as far as how they want to go about finding services. So all of those things create differences in the different countries. However, what I have found is there are a ton of things that are just like us. So I've run ZeroAccelerate in all of these countries. And if you haven't heard what ZeroAccelerate is, it is our business planning workshop that we help accountants and bookkeepers do the change management behind the scenes in order to be able to put together a business plan and take their business into the cloud. Well, I ran this in each country, and every time I was going into a country, the leaders there were like, no, our accountants are different, our bookkeepers are different. And when we would go run the workshop, it was the exact same conversation that I was used to in the United States. So there's always early adopters, and that is the same. There's early adopters in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and the United States. But then there aren't the early adopters, and it's when is it the right time to do it? When should I do it? Should I do it? I got to learn how to sell. I got to learn how to market. Same exact issues that all of us deal with as accounting professionals. So that was really enlightening to see that we really are all the same because we're trying to serve clients. We're trying to help clients thrive within very confined ways of doing accounting at the end of the day. One thing that I have seen similar with our early adopters in the United States as well as those in other countries is they don't see borders anymore. Once they've unlocked the technology in their practice, they're looking at the opportunities out there and going, wow, there's so much business out there that is available, which made me start to think about, my parents were, my grandparents were immigrants, and the risks that immigrants took to come over to the United States, that is the light in early adopters' eyes. They're just excited about, I can actually start networking with accountants and bookkeepers from other countries and start doing work cross geographies. So if I have a client in Australia, but they're doing business in the United States, I can network with a Xero advisor in the United States and be able to work and collaborate on those clients together. But without making that change, and if everybody isn't working in the same way, they can't refer that business. They need to find like-minded Xero advisors, accountants, bookkeepers, so that their clients are handled in the same way that they're used to in their countries. So what that leaves us with is a choice. It's whether you take the risk to think about global. I would say that, the way we built client bases in the past has always been about our local market, our local geographies, our relationships. I have my own practice that I sold, but I've also consulted probably with thousands of accounting firms at this point. And there's so many traditional accounting firms that have depended on the fact that they've been in that region for a long time, and everybody knows who they are, and they expect that natural referral to come in. With the change in technology, that will change eventually, because people are out there looking for a fit that has to do with what they need. They're not necessarily looking that you're across the street from them. They're looking for someone that's an industry expert in what they do and can deliver the services that they need. And what I would ask you at this point in time when you're thinking about this, if it seems something pretty out there, going global and thinking about expanding and networking with people outside of the US, is to picture your practice and yourself 3 to 5 years from now. And how you would look back at your practice now, today, in 3 to 5 years, and what would you be sorry that you didn't take the risk? Because the problem is, this is almost like insurance. When you need it, you can't get it. So you have to put in the time and the investment in order to be ready for when these things really start to hit. And our early adopters are doing that now. So I have 5 tips to think about as you go through this process and to see if this is something that is interest to you. So first of all, it's all about the mindset. So I would say that if you are looking to grow your business, a business plan is key. And you have to be very conscious about what you want to do. So it doesn't have to be global. It could be just, moving your technology, but thinking about today, what do I want a year from now? And maybe 5 years from now, I do want those opportunities to be able to open up. So I need to start putting a business plan together that's going to give me the steps and the deadlines in my practice to get me there. The second tip I would say is that I have a lot of accounting firms that are comfortable with where they are today. So they say, if it ain't broke, why fix it? So I would say if you don't want to completely change your practice, which is always an option, you can fine-tune it. So take pieces of your practice that you can test with. Where are you going to do your research and development to innovate? To think about what you could possibly do and where you're okay to fail. So I'm going to test something that I'm okay to fail because my client base today is stable and I'm protecting it as I go through it. Take advantage of meeting international accountants. So my eyes are wide open on this now that I have been to XeroCon in all these different countries. I have met with international accounting and bookkeeping associations as well. And what you find is, so all of our networking till this time has been mostly in the United States. But the international accountants come here. They come here to learn what we're learning, to understand how to do business in the U.S. And I would propose you should go there and learn business, how to do business in those other countries that are of interest to you, where you want to network and where you want to make those connections. There are also ways that you don't have to go to another country. So there are websites like Coursera.org, and it has international universities on that website where you can learn from international professors about different topics that are happening in those countries. And then, as you just heard from Ash, he's led the charge for the Certified Global Management Accountant designation to integrate with CIMA, which is the International Management Association. That is the future. So this is beyond Xero. This is about management accountants globally sharing resources and best practices of how to be better management accountants. My third tip to you would be do what you do best. So technology is constantly evolving, so whatever you decide on today may not be the stack of technology that you have in the future. And it is hard to be an expert on everything. So find what you're passionate about, the things that you want to specialize in, and network with other accountants and bookkeepers so that you can collaborate and share clients with each other so that you're able to create those efficiencies in your practice. The fourth tip I would say is expand your thinking on hiring. So there is no need for a physical office anymore. We have many Xero advisors with no physical office. They are completely remote, and many practices that are taking associates that are in other countries to help with work that they're doing. So finding that best talent, making sure that you're not limited just in your region of what's available, that you go outside. And my fifth tip would be is to become a thought leader. So whenever you specialize in something and become an expert in it, become a thought leader in it so that it does go beyond borders naturally. So through social media, through blogging, through the conferences that you decide to go to, really be out there becoming an expert in that area so that people are coming to find you as well, no matter what country they're in, because they can learn from you. So this is a picture of my global education team. And what you can't tell in this picture is there's actually 4 countries represented. So New Zealand, Australia, UK, and the US, all of our leaders are represented in that picture. And what makes us so much better as a global team are the things that make us different in our countries, because it pushes all of us as we're trying to figure out how to innovate all of the education that we do for Xero. So we get limitations from a certain country and says, no, we can't do that in the UK, or we need to do that in Australia. And so all of us have to come back and rethink how we're going to do this together to be able to solve for everybody, and maybe there's a new way to do it. That's how this works with accountants as well, is when you can learn from those other accountants and bookkeepers how they're doing things, it can expand your thinking on the way that you've always thought to do things. So my biggest suggestion with that is be open to listening rather than telling them how things have to be, because things are changing and the industry is changing, and learning from all that is so important. And lastly, I'm going to leave off with the boat that my grandparents came on when they came into this country. And to me, this is the epitome of taking a risk. So they came over to this country not knowing what was on the other side. And my family has benefited from those risks that they took. And sometimes we forget how we started here in the United States with all of our immigrant ancestors and taking those risks and being entrepreneurial, helping all, they help their neighbors, all to succeed. And right now, this is that opportunity again to be entrepreneurial. This is the exciting time to break down those borders, use the cloud as a catalyst, and use this networking as the key to get you there.